Michael Mantler, born August 10, 1943, is an Austrian composer and trumpeter in new jazz and contemporary music. Career: United States. Mantler was born in Vienna, Austria. He went to the United States in 1962 to study music, and after early activities within the New York avant-garde community, including work with Cecil Taylor and the Jazz Composers Guild. He was a founder of the Jazz Composers Orchestra Association, aka JCOA, a non-profit organization to commission, perform, and record new compositions for jazz orchestra. The problems of independently distributing the orchestra's record label led him to form the New Music Distribution Service, as a division of JCOA. In 1972, an organization which was to serve many independent labels for almost 20 years. He then had a personal and professional relationship with Carla Bley, to whom he was married from 1967 to 1992, and with whom he had a daughter, Karen Mantler, now also a musician in her own right. Eventually Bley and he established their own company, What? A record label, recording studio, and publisher. He toured and recorded extensively with the Carla Bley Band as well as occasionally with his own live performance projects. Mantler recorded many solo albums with varying instrumentation and personnel, emphasizing his work as a composer rather than as a band leader. Appearing infrequently live, he mostly concentrated on composing and recording. Among others, he recorded an album with the strings of the London Symphony Orchestra plus soloists, Something There, and several albums of songs using the words of writers as diverse as Samuel Beckett, No Answer, Harold Pinter, Silence, and Edward Gorey, The Hapless Child. Various commissions from and performances with European orchestras followed, including work at Swedish radio, North and West German radio, the Lille Opera, and Danish radio. His 1987 recording, Many Have No Speech, an album of songs in English, German, and French, was based on the poetry of Samuel Beckett, Ernst Meister, and Philippe Soupeau. It was written for chamber orchestra, trumpet and guitar soloists, and additionally, for the singing voices of rock musicians Jack Bruce, Marianne Faithfull, as well as Robert Wyatt. Career: Europe. In 1991 he left the United States and moved to Europe, dividing his time between Copenhagen, Denmark and the south of France. A new orchestral piece was commissioned by the Austrian Donau Festival, and was premiered near Vienna in June 1991 by the No. Tonkunstler Orchestra, conducted by Michael Gibbs, with Andy Shepherd as soloist. New compositions were also commissioned by the Danish Radio Big Band and the North German Radio Big Band in Hamburg. During 1992 Mantler recorded a new album, titled Folly Seeing All This, released by ECM Records in March 1993, which features the Balanescu String Quartet plus other instrumentalists. The album includes new instrumental compositions, and one song, music set to Samuel Beckett's last work, written shortly before his death in 1989. The poem, What is the Word?, featuring the voice of Jack Bruce. In 1993 he formed the Chamber Music and Songs Ensemble, featuring his trumpet plus Mona Larsson, voice, Bjørn Rupe, guitar, Kim Christensen, keyboards, and a string quartet consisting of Marianne Sorensen, violin, Mette Winther, viola, Gunilla Chow, viola, and Hella Sorensen, cello. Its premiere took place at the Copenhagen Jazz House in September, followed by a studio production at Denmark Radio. Circo un Pies Innocente, a suite of songs and interludes for voice, untypical big band, and chamber ensemble, with words by the Italian poet Giuseppe Ungaretti. had its premiere in concert at Denmark Radio in January 1994. Featured were the voice of Mona Larsson, Mantler's ensemble, and the Danish radio big band, conducted by Ole Koch Hansen. The work was subsequently recorded in the studio and released by ECM Records in 1995. The School of Understanding, sort of an opera, had its premiere in August 1996 at Aachen, the new Museum of Modern Art in Copenhagen. Participants included singers Jack Bruce, Mona Larsson, Susie Hildgaard, John Greaves, Don Preston, Karen Mantler, Per Jorgensen, and Robert Wyatt. The recording was released as a double CD by ECM Records in November 1997, followed by a new live production at the Hebel Theater in Berlin. His One Symphony, commissioned by the broadcaster Hessischer Rundfunk, was premiered in November 1998 by the Radio Symphony Orchestra Frankfurt, conducted by Peter Rundle. The recording of the work was released in February 2000, together with previously recorded material featuring Mona Larsson and the Chamber Music and Songs Ensemble interpreting songs set to texts by Ernst Meister. Hide and Seek, an album of songs with words by Paul Auster, from his play by the same name, for chamber orchestra and the voices of Robert Wyatt and Susie Hildgaard, was released in March 2001. Theatrical productions of the work, conceived by Rolf Heim, who has previously worked with Mantler on the School of Understanding performances, were produced in the spring of 2002 in Copenhagen, Cannes, February, and Berlin, Hebel Theater, March. His Concerto for Marimba and Vibraphone, originally commissioned by Portuguese percussionist Pedro Carneiro in 2001, was premiered at the Hessischer Rundfunk in March 2005 with the Radio Symphony Orchestra Frankfurt, conducted by Pascal Roffe. During September 2006, Porgy and Bess in Vienna presented a series of retrospective portrait concerts with his chamber music and songs ensemble. In recognition of his life's work, he received several Austrian awards: the State Prize for Improvised Music, the Prontauer Prize of the City of St. Pölten, where he spent his early youth, and the Music Prize of the City of Vienna. The Anthology Review, Recordings 1968 to 2000, released by ECM in 2006, traced his musical path during more than 30 years of recordings for JCOA. What an ECM! He appeared at the Jazz Fest Berlin in November 2007 with his Concertos project, featuring the Kammer Ensemble Neue Musik Berlin under the direction of Roland Klutterg. A studio recording of the concertos with soloists Björn Rupe, guitar, Bob Rockwell, tenor saxophone, Roswell Rudd, trombone, Pedro Carneiro, marimba and vibraphone, Magella Stockhausen, piano, Nick Mason, percussion, and Mantler on trumpet, was released by ECM during November 2008. His next CD, For Two, a series of duets for guitar, Björn Rupe, and piano, Passalio, was released by ECM during June 2011. New works were commissioned and performed by the Max Brand Ensemble, conducted by Christoph Czech, Chamber Music 8, Tage der Neuen Musik, Krems, Austria, 2012, and by the Chaos Orchestra, conducted by Arnaud Petit, Oiseau de Guerre, featuring singer Himiko Paganotti, Forum Blanc Mesnil, France, 2014. During September 2013, Porgy and Bess in Vienna presented his Jazz Composers Orchestra Update project, featuring the Nouvelle Cuisine Big Band, conducted by Christoph Czech, with soloists Michael Mantler, trumpet, Harry Sokol and Wolfgang Puschnug, saxophones, Björn Rupe, guitar, David Hellbach, piano, and the radio, string, quartet, Vienna, The program included a complete reworking of all the pieces from the original 1968 The Jazz Composers Orchestra album, as well as of older material from as early as 1963. Never before performed or recorded. A selection of recordings from these performances was released by ECM Records during November 2014. Discography. As composer or leader. 1966. Communication. Fontana. Jazz Composers Orchestra. 1966. Jazz Realities. Fontana. With Steve Lacy and Carla Bley. 1968. The Jazz Composers Orchestra. JCOA, ECM. With Cecil Taylor, Don Cherry, Pharoah Sanders, Larry Coryell, Roswell Rudd, and Gato Barbieri. 1974. No Answer. What? ECM. With Don Cherry, Jack Bruce, Carla Bley. Words by Samuel Beckett. 1975. 13. What? ECM. For two orchestras and piano. 1976. The Hapless Child. What? ECM. With Robert Wyatt, Turgey Reipdal, Jack DeJohnette. Words by Edward Gorey. 1977. Silence. What? ECM. With Robert Wyatt, Kevin Coyne, Chris Spedding. Words by Harold Pinter. 1978. Movies. What? ECM. With Larry Coryell, Steve Swallow, and Tony Williams. 1980. More Movies. What? ECM. With Philip Catherine, Steve Swallow, and Gary Window. 1983. Something There. What? ECM. With Nick Mason, Mike Stern, Mike Gibbs, and the London Symphony Orchestra Strings. 1985. Alien. What? ECM. With Don Preston. 1987. Live. What? ECM. With Jack Bruce, Rick Fenn, Don Preston, and Nick Mason. 1988. Many Have No Speech. What? ECM. With Jack Bruce, Marianne Faithfull, Robert Wyatt, Rick Fenn. The Danish Radio Concert Orchestra. Words by Samuel Beckett, Ernst Meister, and Philippe Soupeau. 1990. The Whatworks Family Album. What? ECM. Sampler. 1993. Folly Seeing All This. ECM. With the Balanescu String Quartet. Rick Fenn, and Jack Bruce. Words by Samuel Beckett. 1995. Circo un Pies Innocente. ECM. With Mona Larsson, Chamber Ensemble, and the Danish Radio Big Band. Words by Giuseppe Ungaretti. 1997. The School of Understanding. Opera. ECM. With Jack Bruce, Mona Larsson, Susie Hildegard, John Greaves, Don Preston, Karen Mantler, Per Jorgensen, Robert Wyatt. Chamber Ensemble. Strings of the Danish Radio Concert Orchestra. Conducted by Giordano Bellicampi. Words by Michael Mantler. 2000. Songs and One Symphony. ECM. With Mona Larsson plus Chamber Ensemble and the Radio Symphony Orchestra Frankfurt. Conducted by Peter Rundle. Words by Ernst Meister. 2001. Hide and Seek. ECM. With Robert Wyatt, Susie Hildegard, and Chamber Ensemble. Words by Paul Auster. 2006. Review. ECM. Recordings 1968 to 2000. 2008. Concertos. ECM. With Michael Mantler, Björn Rupe, Bob Rockwell, Roswell Rudd, Pedro Carnero, Magella Stockhausen, Nick Mason. Camera Ensemble Neue Musik Berlin. Conducted by Roland Klutug. 2011. For two. ECM. With Björn Rupe and Pasalio. 2014. Jazz Composers Orchestra Update. ECM. With Michael Mantler, Björn Rupe, Harry Sokol, Wolfgang Puschnug, David Halbach. Radio. String Quartet. Vienna. Nouvelle Cuisine Big Band. conducted by Christoph Czech, with Carla Bley. 1971. Escalator Over the Hill. 1974. Tropic Appetites. 1977. Dinner Music. 1978. European Tour 1977. 1979. Musikmechanik. 1981. Social Studies. 1982. Live. 1983. Mortel Randonnée. Polygram. Soundtrack of Claude Miller film. 1984. I Hate to Sing. 1984. Heavy Heart. Contributions to tribute albums. 1981. Amarcord Nino Rota. Hannibal. Various artists. Performs on 8½. 1984. That's the Way I Feel Now. A&M. Various artists. Performs on Misterioso. With others. 1969. A Genuine Tong Funeral. RCA. Gary Burton. 1970. Liberation Music Orchestra. Album. Impulse. Charlie Haydn and the Liberation Music Orchestra. 1976. Q. Roan. Virgin. John Greaves and Peter Blegvard. 1981. Fictitious Sports. Harvest. Nick Mason. 1983. The Ballad of the Fallen. ECM. Charlie Haydn and the Liberation Music Orchestra. Official Michael Mantler website.